So taking it back a couple of years, I'd always wanted children, but the thing that terrified me, actually all my life, was hospitals. The idea of getting a baby out was pretty terrifying too. I remember going for coffee with my mum and just bawling because I was just like, I know this has got to happen and I don't see how that's possible. And the only way around that really was to educate myself. And I think it's become a very much encouraged thing, which is great because of the pressure on NHS and all the rest of it, to educate yourself in the lead up to you having to have a baby. And that in turn has made it a much more positive experience for anybody I know, with an education of what happens scientifically and, you know, just to your body and how natural it is. You know, we've done it for years and years and years, and believing that is just such a powerful toolkit for you in the first place without knowing anything else. The fact that effectively every second person in the world has pushed a baby out. You know, animals do it with no help whatsoever. They just go into a corner and make it happen. And you know, it's only more recently, with I guess too many options maybe, that things have got more complicated. And obviously, especially in the UK, like, things are really pushed and systems are stretched, and it just means it falls more in our hands, in my opinion, to make it a positive experience. And the only way for you to really believe that can happen is to actually know what you're talking about. Now, I'm somebody that hates science, or hated science until I had a baby, and then I was like, actually, this is pretty cool. But yeah, in general, at school, like, my teachers gave up on me in that capacity, because I was just so not interested. However, in this process, the magic and just, yeah, I mean, our bodies are amazing. That's all I'm gonna say. I think go elsewhere for a full-on scientific education of how you have a baby, but yeah, it's mental, and we are designed to do it. Our bodies adapt for it. You know, all of this chat about, oh, we're gonna push a watermelon out the size of a pea hole. No, you're not. Like, your body is moving and your baby's skull is moving to work together to make that process happen. And it's nowhere near as horrific as in your head you're probably thinking it is if you haven't done it yet. But I do think a lot of that is on your state of mind. And if you've been listening to negatives and stories that have been scaring you, quite possibly you're lying to me. I don't believe you. And that will overrule, as it does with me. You know, if I hear a positive birth story and they put 3 negatives in it at the minute, but 20 positives, all I remember at the end of that story are the 3 negatives, because we're humanly conditioned to do that. And yeah, it is what it is. So it's just a case of trying to steer yourself and your thinking away from that negativity. And, you know, as I say, with my son, I had a really positive experience. So it's not even that I've had a bad experience and now I'm thinking about that. It was good. Like, I think as far as I know, yeah, I mean, I really struggled through people I know to find positive birth stories before I had my little boy. And yeah, it's really interesting because you can find them on the internet. You know, there are some great birth stories out there if you want to find them, but it seems that people in person like to tell you the gory negatives, and you just don't need to know it, because one, you're gonna forget those little bits because it's an insanely amazing experience overall. And 2, just the whole process is different for everybody, so there's just no point in even comparing. It's more the science and the understanding what's happening to you that helps you feel like, okay, yeah, my body can do this, or at least that's what helped me. So let me tell you a little bit about my story with Rocco. Overall, I'm a physiological birth advocate, want to do that all the way. And I've done a lot of research going down the channel of kind of understanding intervention and hospital births and you know, because they're stretched, like, I mean, in my antenatal class with Rocco and in various friends' antenatal classes, pretty much everybody ended up in a C-section at the hospital. And I think that's mainly down to them being stretched and not having the time and the capacity to kind of see out the natural labour process, which requires time and patience and space. And it's just not really the world we live in, unfortunately, at the moment. So totally get why it happens, but my main thing is to avoid that happening, because I really didn't want to go down that route unless there was obviously a safety reason to do that. So ended up planning to have him at a birth centre. The only negative for my experience was I got checked at the birth centre in the morning, like to make sure my waters were broken and I wasn't dreaming, and then went home for that dream day that is the number one key thing to your labour day, is making sure you've kind of lined up all of your favourite things. So whether that's like your favourite food or your favourite movies or music or bath or whatever makes you just feel great, list it out, make a list, make sure your birth partner knows what your dream day looks like, and live that until you're in that process of not being able to live that anymore because things are getting serious. And yeah, so we got checked at Crowborough, all good, that's the birth centre, and then came home, made a little nest on the floor, basically, got really comfy, watched all the favourite oxytocin movies, Love Actually, etc, etc, and yeah, like just chilled out really. And then at about 5 o'clock that day, so that was about midnight, the night before that things kicked off, went in very early morning, like 5 a.m. or something, to get checked to make sure waters had broken, which they had, and then went home and chilled out. And then about 5 o'clock, my partner got a phone call saying that the birth centre was closed due to not enough staff. So in that moment of, so let me take it back a bit, that dream day needs to be uninterrupted, right? It's all about low lights, keeping your head down, like losing yourself in this process. No interruptions, no phone calls with anybody, just get in your head and focus on your body, connect with your body, all of that stuff, which I did, and it was all good. And then we got this phone call saying the birth centre had shut, and it was, the only other option was to go to the hospital. So that was a real like a real reset moment, because I'd kind of been really positive and really on top of things and in control, and it had felt really good. And then it was a bit of a, you know, slamming on the brakes. Okay, reset, let's go and have a bath again. Let's do this, let's do that. And I kind of had to really retract, because I definitely lost my place in the birth zone in that moment, because it just was so unexpected. But that was fine. Reset. We were lucky enough to have a birth doula that was kind of popping in and out and helping us kind of make home as good as possible. And yeah, kind of reset, all was okay again, and probably went until about 8:30, 9 o'clock, when I was like, when do we go to hospital? Because I can feel that I'm not in control of me anymore, or I'm getting to be that way. And our lovely doula lady was like, you'll know. And in my head I was thinking, I think it was about an hour ago that I would have gone to hospital if I'd known that it was on me. I don't know why, I just thought somebody would tell me when it seemed that I needed to go to hospital. So we did, so we drove to hospital. That was the worst bit, because we'd waited a long time to leave and I'd done the majority of the work at home, which was positive, but it meant that the journey in the car was pretty uncomfortable. I'll put that out there. And to be honest, this is the only bit I remember as uncomfortable of the whole process. So I suppose that's good and bad, isn't it? But yeah, my partner got a lot of abuse in that journey, and I'm sure, well, I've heard from many friends that that's quite common. So enjoy that. But yeah, then we got there, that was all good, got into hospital, got checked again, was 7 centimetres, which was like a massive encouraging factor. There's an awful lot of stuff about not having VEs and things. From my point of view, I wouldn't have wanted more than I had, but to have one at the beginning to make sure I wasn't wrong that it was the beginning of labour, and to have one when we got to hospital to understand whereabouts I was at and know that I'd done a lot of work for a reason, was really kind of positive and made me feel quite like, gave me a new boost and a bit of strength to kind of carry on in the process. Excuse me sounding so out of breath, by the way. I've got a very big baby in my tummy and she's right over my lungs. So yeah, basically that was all positive, and we got seen and moved into a room fairly quickly because it was fairly far along, and I think that those last few centimetres happened quite quickly, or they felt like they did at the time. And as luck would have it, we ended up with a midwife that was actually due to be at the birth centre that evening, so it was probably the same lady that we would have had there anyway, so that was all very serendipitous and happy, and that was great. The only negative in the pushing stage for me was that I hadn't been for a wee for a long time, and basically it was blocking that last little gateway for a baby to be born, which we'd heard about and knew that that was a thing and all the rest of it, but I couldn't go basically. And it led to the team at the hospital really pushing me to push, whereas up till then everything had been naturally led by my body, like I'd done what felt right for me, and that was all very positive. So that caused some issues thereafter, because she was I remember the lady saying to me, "You're not pushing, Charlotte," and me thinking, "Oh, I definitely am." And yeah, then I went for a wee basically, and the baby was born within like 8 minutes after that. So I'd had an hour, probably nearly an hour, I think, of coached pushing, which was fairly against my wishes. But again, obviously, if they're telling you the baby's potentially in distress and the heart rate's dropping, whatever, you're just going to do anything you can to get them out, which I did. But then it turned out it was just that I needed a wee. So yeah, it's overall was very positive, especially for a first birth. You know, there's so much stigma around, oh, the first birth goes on forever, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be wiped out, you're going to be this, that and the other. I genuinely think all of that positivity in that first day of kind of going through the motions, enjoying the day rather than panicking, like I took a lot of time to really focus on the breathing. I took a lot of time to just zone in on what I was feeling. And I think those two things alone actually got me through 75% of the process. And then, yeah, just kind of being really comfortable, knowing all the tricks, and your birth partner having knowledge on, like, there's this amazing thing they do called the hip squeeze, which if you don't know about it, Google it or YouTube it or something, because it's, there was a time when everything started getting a lot more, I guess I would say, sensitive. I think I would say the pain word that they tried to get you to avoid using in hypnobirthing and stuff is quite right to be avoided, because I don't think any of it was painful. Ultimately, pain is caused by bad things, right? So if this is your journey of your baby coming to you, to me there's no negative in that. Pain is a negative word. So the power and the surging and the tightening and those words that definitely you do experience were very relevant. But I wouldn't say any of it was painful as such. But when things started getting more intense and I could feel my body adapting, this thing called a hip squeeze, where they basically push your hips back together again with all their might. When I say they, my partner or the doula were both taking it in turns, was just amazing. It just kind of really changed where your attention was, and yeah, was a really good distraction from the pain, from the tightening, getting just that bit more intense. So yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, there are loads of different cheeky little things that they can do to kind of make it nicer for you. So make sure they're educated too. I think there's an awful lot of stuff about, us women going out there and educating ourselves and making sure we know what we want. that's right, but also when you get to hospital or birth centre or wherever you're or even at home, when you're opting to have whatever option you are, and the midwife standing there going, so what, you know, what should we do about this? Your birth partner is going to be the one that is your voice and is your advocate for your dreams and wishes and requirements and all the rest of it. So make sure they know confidently what you are after and what you're definitely not after, I think is more important, because there's definitely some things that get pushed on you more than others. And ultimately, none of us are doctors, so we're gonna, if they say it strongly enough, we're just gonna go, okay, yeah, we'll do whatever you say. But if you are that connected with your body, I genuinely believe from my first experience that you know if you actually do need that or not, and can push back. So yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, if they are suggesting something, an intervention or whatever, you can even say to them, like, just give us a second, and then get your birth partner, or your birth partner can say that, and then get them to have a conversation with you without them, without the midwife or whoever it is kind of in your way, whilst you make the decision on what's sensible and what's not. But ultimately, this experience is entirely different for everybody, and that's my experience, is what's happened so far. I'm actually finding it quite challenging this time around, in the fact that I did have a positive first birth. So I'm like, the cynic in me is like, well, it can't be good again, can it? Because it was so good the first time. But actually, I do genuinely think a lot of it is just mindset. And I've spent the last few months very pregnant, running after a toddler, which is not relaxing. Whereas last time I was super zen and spending all the time focusing on my mind and doing relaxations every day and doing all the right stuff, which, you know, I encourage hugely. If you can do it, whenever you're about to have a baby, please get your head in that place. But I feel like I'm like speed doing it to catch up. But yeah, that's just what comes of having the summer holidays just before you're gonna have a baby, really. It's just all a bit hectic and crazy. But yeah, all positive in general, and definitely any negative was overruled with a positive. So any experience that I just said that wasn't good, for example, the Crowborough thing, where the birth centre shut unexpectedly, it almost bought me an extra hour to kind of slow down and reset and re-zen. And actually, you know, we ended up at the hospital. They were worried about the baby's heart rate dropping when I was in the pushing stages. Potentially that would have been a lot more scary if we'd been at the birth centre. So it was nice to know we were at a hospital, so if they did need to quickly get in there, they could have. And actually there was some serious confidence in that, and the fact that obviously all of the medical teams and tools are there, whereas at a birth centre you're slightly more limited on your options, which is why they give you more time to kind of let it happen naturally. So it's very much a personal choice, but that's where I ended up. So I'm now going to talk you through just some of the things that kind of helped me. If you're a performer of any sort, really, I think the way I interpreted the normal kind of hypnobirthing and state of mind tools that many of us are taught in antenatal classes and things will reflect better for you. Yeah, just take what you will and see where you end up with it.